How did you become embedded with LeBron James all of last season?
Got a call from a former colleague of mine that works for Spring Hill, and he had said, I have something for you. I think you'd be perfect for it, but it's a freelance job. And at the time, I was a little wary about going freelance because I had been with ESPN for 15 years. I really loved the job I was doing, the content I was working on. And then he was like, you'd be LeBron James's director for a year. And I was like, I will quit tomorrow.
Well, today's guest on Frame by Frame, I'm very excited to talk to. We have Emmy award-winning director and producer Susan Ansman out of LA. She recently worked on Starting Five exclusively with LeBron James and is coming off of Court of Gold, all on Netflix. Susan, thanks so much for coming on the show. I can't wait to dive into your career journey today.
For having me.
Well, you and I were catching up before, and you have this amazing story on how you got pulled into Starting Five. I would love to start there. And how did you become embedded with LeBron James all of last season?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I had just actually done an interview with LeBron and Michael Wilbon, obviously doing the interview at ESPN. And I was producing that probably about 4 months before the show was even announced or conceptualized. And then I got a call from a former colleague of mine that works for Spring Hill. And he had said, I have something for you. I think you'd be perfect for it, but it's a freelance job. And at the time, I was a little wary about going freelance because I had been with ESPN for 15 years. I really loved the job I was doing, the content I was working on. And then he was like, you'd be LeBron James's director for a year. And I was like, I will quit tomorrow. And obviously I didn't quit tomorrow, but you know how it is. Like, you're just like, this is an opportunity where I think it's worth taking that risk for, because it's such a dream opportunity to be able to work not only for me on the NBA for a full year, but to work with one of the greatest athletes of all time.
Absolutely. And so I think, for me growing up, just watching LeBron, basically his entire career, he's one of the few where it's like, I literally remember watching his high school games on ESPN to now watching him. Take me through, like, what is that moment like because I imagine things probably came together pretty quickly. Like, how embedded are with him right away? Is it pedal to the metal? Are you feeling him out? Because I feel like today I really want to chat with you on, like, what does it really take to work with athletes like a LeBron James?
It was like trial by fire, right? Right since day one. I mean, the show hadn't recorded anything yet. And within, I think, less than a week of me accepting this job, I was in LeBron James's house on Halloween watching him get Beetlejuice makeup done. And it was surprising for so many reasons, because I had worked with high caliber stars at ESPN for years, and the access is very limited. It's very controlled. It's very media friendly. And the beauty of this show of Starting Five is that you're able to be with this athlete and get the real 24/7 version of that athlete. And that doesn't mean they're different than who they portray in the media, but you're able to really get to know who they are. And by being in this guy's house on day one, you're able to, he's comfortable, he's relaxed, he's talking to you. We barely know each other. And that availability and authenticity right off the bat, I was like, this is going to be a good year. And he was very open, very welcoming. Savannah was there that night too, getting her makeup done, and Bryce had come in. So it was just kind of nice to start off the year that way. And from there, it was just kind of developing that trust that if I'm there, this isn't the normal media. This is just capturing who you are as a person, and then storytelling how you are as a person to the public. And it was a process, right? You have to kind of build that trust over time. But we were able to see him at games, at home, on the road. And every time you see somebody and you capture who they are, and you're not in this gotcha moment, you're just a fly on the wall. And I don't know if they're used to that 24/7, especially LeBron, because a lot of these guys have personal shooters these days. And it's very rare that they don't. LeBron does not have a personal shooter following him around all day. And that's kind of what I became last year. I had an FX3, and I would just show up if it was not a crew, and I would just roll. And he got really comfortable very quickly.
That's amazing, because I think in my experience as well, working with high-end athletes, time is like the greatest form of currency you have to build that trust. And it seems like you didn't have it. And I think watching Starting Five, the first scene is like what you guys were doing. So that's pretty incredible, because that was my reaction too, of like, oh wow, like LeBron's just going for it. He's being his like silly self, goofing around, talking about like scaring each other as kids right away. Was there time to have a little bit of like pinch me moment, or were you just like head down trying to capture the best stuff possible?
That day it was head down. It was just kind of like trying not to, for lack of a better term, fangirl, because it's like, this is such a cool thing. And less being like you're with LeBron, it's like, this is just such a breakthrough moment for NBA athletes, media access, or just from what I'm used to. It just felt very real. And that's all I had wanted for years of working at ESPN, was like, get to know these guys and who they are as real people. And that was just right away, right off the bat, being able to be with somebody like that, of that caliber, and them being so real. It was, after you leave, you're in the car and you're like, oh man, this is my life now. Like, this is really cool and authentic and interesting and fun. And he's going to make it easy and fun. And it's just going to be just a brand new set of filmmaking and opportunities with guys of this caliber. And we've seen it every once in a while with, new docs that come out. It's a very saturated space, but it's not saturated with guys like LeBron.
Trying to pick out what gear to use as a content creator, filmmaker can be overwhelming. So I put together a Google sheet that I will update frequently with gear that I've either used or can recommend. We'd love for you to have that resource. Make sure you click on the link below. Save time, save money, shoot better. Now let's get back to the show. So I got to ask then, were you the one in the car when he's just rapping on the way to the game with your FX3? That was one of my favorite scenes as well.
Yeah, that was just me. And it was like, just get in the car and go. And he's a big music guy. And so,
clearly,
so I'd be in the car with him, and, it was just like, let's roll and see what we can get. And he had fun with it. And, it was very rare that I would ask him to do something. I think maybe like twice. Most of the time he would just be there and do what he normally does. And what he normally does is interesting. So going down to the basics of him just enjoying himself rapping, because we see that all the time with his Instagram, right? He'll put stuff like that out there for people, but not in that moment. And you're going to a game and things like that. So he's definitely, he had fun with it. Every chance he saw a camera, he had fun with it.
Clearly. And then how does like the storytelling and the structuring go with that, of like, or you're not just like being a complete fly on the wall. I think there is some sort of storytelling along with it, because he does put himself out there. I mean, like the toes thing is hilarious. I think that's like a well-known thing, but how do you go about incorporating those things that are known to then make it a deeper layer of storytelling?
Yeah, we had a great story team, and I was actually involved in the edit in the first season. And so it was really interesting to see that process of how that works when you're juggling his storytelling with 4 other athletes, and how that fits into, at the time, 10 episodes. And so you're trying to film everything you can as you go, right? If somebody says, hey, show up, or you think this might be interesting, you put it on the schedule, you ask, and then you try to get it filmed. That one was very last minute, and we just showed up and they were getting treatment, and we knew everything with LeBron's body would be very interesting to people. One of the most interesting things is how much he spends monetarily, how much time he spends on his body physically. And that was a moment where you're like, oh, he might have this might be his one little thing that he can't fix or he can't treat. And, it was kind of funny to see him in that moment being very self-deprecating, because he doesn't have to be. He's literally the top peak athlete. And just him having fun in that moment. And we were like, this relates so much to his story of how he cares for his body. But it also then at that point relates to the story of who he is as a person. And the most surprising thing about LeBron this whole season was that he was the most normal person on the planet. And that is so hard for people to believe, I think, because you're like, this guy is stratosphere level of fame and like that caliber of an athlete. And being able to show that he's normal in some capacity with that moment in his storytelling, it just fit perfectly. And just joking with the guys, right? That was what really made that fun to be there for. That is just, him talking shit with Austin Reeves and Gabe Vincent. And it normalizes him to the public, which is what we were able to see when we were with him.
100%. Even like the kids roasting him too, right? Like what kids don't roast their dad? Like I just think that was such a great like little moment that had nothing to do with basketball. Was there ever like a moment, or was there like where you guys was like, okay, like we're locked in, like completely trust each other, or was it just pretty much always that way?
It felt that way. The one thing that you kind of had to take a step back for at one point was we did I believe it was his second interview in maybe Indianapolis or something. And when we were there, we did the interview. It was like almost 2 hours long, which is very long for someone to sit in the chair in general. And I just remember after we left, I was like, he just interviewed on a game day. And that is, and they went out and won, obviously, which makes you feel much better when you do things like that, when you shoot on game days, things like that. That has never happened. Like that just doesn't happen for anyone. And so he's at the arena for a 7 p.m. tip at like 10 a.m. So this interview happens incredibly early in the morning. And then he still goes out there and works for, 12, 14 hours. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, he actually really is into this show. And he's really into talking in the moment, how he feels about things. And, it seems like such a small thing, interviewing on a game day. But that does not happen in this world, in any sport usually. And so that was the moment where I'm like, he's all in, he's let us in.
Yeah. And I would say really the peak of that for me had like nothing to do with the on the court, but I think the family sharing about, Bronny's health incident, I think really struck a nerve with me, just being like a new dad. And this is like LeBron James, the dad, that's like very concerned about his son. He's thanking the USC staff. I just thought that was just really cool of them to be open and share that, because, there's parents all over the world that can relate with different situations like that.
Yeah, that was something that you have to be so delicate with, right? Because it had just happened and he had just come back mid-season. And to be able to be a part of that and witness how a dad, not even just a basketball player, but how a dad needs to be there for his kid and wants to be there for his kid, that he'll move to the end of the earth to make that happen. He is that guy. He really is that guy. And when we were in the biggest example is we're in the middle of the first in-season tournament in Vegas. They win it. The game ends at like midnight and you're just getting everything ready and together. And he literally takes a flight home at, I'm sure, like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And we flew home that night as well, or that morning, to be there for Bronny's debut at USC. And that was very early in the morning. It was basically like 24 hours of no sleep for him. And so for us too. But it was so motivating to do that and be a part of that and see that. He was like, I can't miss this for anything. And it just, he sacrifices so much, I think, for his kids. And to be able to be a part of that and see that was just incredible.
That really is. Now let's back up a little bit. How did you get here? You said you spent 15 years at ESPN. We have a little bit of, similar journeys where we kind of started on the broadcast production side and have crossed over into, the more filmmaking documentary style of work. How did this whole journey start for you?
A very different path from when I started. I was hired right out of college and I had road experience working with EBS. Basketball junkie from day one. I was doing Suns and Lakers playoff games in the truck in 2007. And
for those of you who don't know EVS, they're the replay operators in the truck who back up and rewind replays for you to watch on TV. Just so.
Yeah, not a lot of women do that. And you have to be a legit crazy person to do it. High stress. Everyone's yelling, take this angle. There's, anywhere from however many 6 to 12 inputs of cameras at a game, depending on the level of that game. And there's literally one person there just getting every single slow motion replay feedback. So when you're at home yelling at the TV, being like, where's my replay? That's one person. And I love that. I love the pressure. I loved all of that. And when I got hired at ESPN, I actually got moved into a studio role. And so I was in the control rooms kind of doing that, but with, if there's a home run in the middle of Sports Center on midnight, I was doing that replay. And from there, I was like, I really miss editing, would love to do that. So I kind of moved over into a highlights role, and then realized that I really missed storytelling as a whole, and it interests me so much. So then I moved over into their post-production group, where I was an avid editor. And that's where I was able to work on, E60s, SportsCenter Featured, things for NBA Countdown, for Game Day, for every show that's on ESPN that has a feature that's anywhere from a minute and a half to 20 minutes. Like, that's what I would work on as an editor. And then I was given the opportunity to move over as the first editor to become a feature producer at ESPN. And that was slightly terrifying, but in a great way, because I hadn't done that on my own ever. And I was a good sell there, where I was editing my own stuff, graphics, Pro Tools, all on my little laptop. So I was able to move into that role and really dig in and learn from a lot of great mentors at ESPN, scripting and storytelling, and really how to give a good comprehensive interview in a short period of time. Being able to learn all of the short interview and get as much as I can in that period of time really prepared me for where I am today, where I'm now, given more extensive periods of time, but I know that these people are so busy and they have, only a small amount of time for us. So trying to get as much information from somebody as possible in a respectful way, that's what I was able to really learn at ESPN in that crazy, quick turnaround, nuts time of features. And, I had 24-hour turnarounds over there and that's a very different world than documentary filmmaking. But being able to have that tool, I think, has helped me in being able to just jump up and go shoot now at the drop of a hat and really get content that we need, because I'm used to being able to turn that around. But it was a bit of an unorthodox journey to where I am now. But I think now being able to have worked in absolutely every facet, I was booking travel, pre-prod, I am writing scripts, writing questions, performing the interviews, and then, writing the script after, doing the edit, cleaning it up, sending it out, and literally being the person that would hit play on air. I've done every job in filmmaking, and now shooting, which was not in my repertoire up until
Oh, shooting with LeBron James too, to learn.
Talk about pressure, right? It was, I'd shot in the past here and there, was always a B cam, never an A cam. And, I just remember having my first real shoot with him as a solo person was All-Star. And I was flying with him from LA to Indianapolis, and it was me on the jet and just capturing interview, everything from start to finish, from one location to the next until he actually goes, straight to the game. And it was, a little bit of pressure there, because before that I had people with me on crew and audio, things like that. So I was more of a B cam. And that was the first time I was really truly the A cam. And honestly, from there on out, I became the A cam, because he was so comfortable without the crew. It just was a new world, I think, for him too, maybe, where, I would get a call and I would be in Denver and I'd be able to go film between playoff games. He's playing poker with the guys, and I can just be there and film very quietly and capture the moment without having this gigantic crew, which it's different to be able to say that you've shot most of your stuff that's on the air with LeBron. And that was very cool to see. And I have very much learned a lot from doing that myself and elevated that throughout the year. So by the end of the year, I really was in my groove with it. And now I'm really picked up and really understand. I wouldn't call myself a DP, like documentarian, single person shooter for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, let's talk a little bit about that pressure, right? I mean, I've experienced it doing it with Russ for the first few times. There's really no practice you can do for that situation. I guess, what advice do you have for people kind of coming up of working with as athletes? Because as you mentioned, often the time is very compressed. We can't be having technical issues going on afterwards. I guess, what advice do you have for those who are looking to work with high-end athletes like that?
Just be yourself, right? Because I think I tend to be very self-deprecating if I'm having an issue or my camera's not working. Don't be afraid to say, hey man, just give me 2 seconds. I just have to make sure this is perfect, right? And prep as much as you can, because nothing will ever go as planned in the field. I don't think I've ever had a shoot in the years I've been doing this go off exactly how I planned it. And that's okay. You just have to make sure you're playing jazz, right? And that's the biggest thing I learned, because when you're an editor, you're a perfectionist, and you have, even if you don't have all the time in the world, you can sit and tweak and do it at your own pace. When you are documenting a athlete that is especially a high caliber athlete, when you are documenting them, you have to be on your toes and you have to be ready. And don't worry about, oh, I shot too much, or I kept rolling, or maybe I didn't ask the right question, because you may have another chance to do it. But in the moment, just always be focused, be ready, and then just pivot. That is the biggest thing I can say. Just pivot when you need to. But the biggest thing I learned is listen. Honestly, that's just listen, because there's so many times you're doing interviews with these guys and you have your question list, right? You're ready to go. You may have 30 minutes with, LeBron or somebody. You have 30 minutes to get through an interview. And if you're not listening to them, they may have just given you potential into like this opening to learn about them, or they're ready to talk about it, but no one's really asked them about it. If you're just jumping to the next question, you'll have that chance is missed. It's gone. And even if it doesn't go fully by plan, you may have more that comes out of that by listening. And I feel like I've been able to capture the best stuff from guys when I'm listening to them. And then all of a sudden they give me something else, and then I pivot, and that's great. It's just, you never know what you're going to get from a guy. So it's just, or a girl in general. Long story short, just listen and pivot and play jazz, because that's how you're going to get the best stuff.
Play jazz. I love that. And I think that the other thing I want to talk about too is, like, I know you mentioned it was like an unconventional path for you to get to where you are, but I feel like from the outside looking in, editing probably just played such a big part in you being a great documentarian, because you know what you're going to use in the edit. How has that really, being an editor, made you a better on the field storyteller?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I would be who I am if I did not have that editing background. Because when you have somebody who's just in the storytelling world that hasn't been in the field, you may not understand why things can't be gathered. When you're just in the edit chair, you may not understand why a question didn't get asked, right? When you're in the field, particularly, if you are out there, especially when you're just one camera, which is, as I'm learning, more of the consistent thing in this world of sports documentarian situations and sports docs in general. It's a lot of single camera access. And that's, I'm sure, budgetary. It's just in comfortability with the athlete, but that's where you are. And so when you're a single camera person out there shooting, you need to know what you need in that edit. And that's not just storytelling. You need cutaways, you need B-roll, you need scenes. And so often I remember being an editor and being like, how do I make a scene from this? You gave me a cool little moment where he's talking. I gave like an OTF or an in the moment interview. And then all of a sudden you have nothing to cut it with and you're stuck. And what makes these sports docs so good is when you're in the moment with these guys, right? You're getting Verité, you talk to them, making it a full scene. That's what makes it feel accessy. I feel like you've seen a million things. You're like, oh, here's this B-roll of, LeBron or Jimmy Butler over them talking. We've seen that every day on ESPN, on TNT, on everything. When you're with them and you're in their home and you're getting trophies, you're getting family photos, you're getting all this stuff, that builds a scene. And that's something that I don't know if I would think of as much if I were not an editor. I always want to know, how am I going to start this? How am I going to finish this? It may not be used in that manner, and that's okay, but at least they have the optionality.
Of course. And I think, a lot of times people, maybe they're like, oh, I don't want to edit. But at least in my opinion, like, editing has served me, for all the things that you talked about. So I would definitely encourage, even if you don't want to be an editor full time, to like really try to edit your own stuff, because it does help you become a better storyteller. I
think if you are, especially being in like a showrunner role now for people, because it's, for those who aren't familiar with that, it's like the director is the director, but there's also a showrunner. And so you should be able to know in every role. You don't have to be able to do every role, but at least see what everybody does. Because then I know what an editor may need. Then I know what maybe my audio guy might need. Then I know what, my storytelling team might need for graphics, things like that. Even it comes down to the simplest thing, just getting people's names and their jobs, because you may not, that helps you so much because you can't track everybody down. So being able to follow a role, even shadowing it for a day or two as a director, it'll give you so much knowledge and appreciation that you'll be able to make other people's jobs easier, which in turn makes your job much easier.
Yeah, and I was wondering about that on how this works, because obviously you're not just the show is not just following LeBron. So are you in communication with the other units, following the other players to know what's going on? Are you just focused on LeBron? How does that whole dance work?
Yeah, this show's very communicative. We have daily meetings every day where we are just going in and discussing what people are doing. We have a lot of calendars. We make sure we talk to each other. And that is the best advice I can give to anyone, especially on a show that is so big and has so many moving parts, is just communicating, because I'm able to see what Jimmy Butler's talking about. And being an edit was even better because I could watch everything, right? I could watch all the interviews, watch all of the scenes, and make sure that, oh, maybe this would relate to this scenario, or this relates to this other scenario. And that's very helpful, because it's 5 storylines that you're juggling. And last season it was including a guy that wins the championship, right? So by the end of the year, you're trying to close out other people's storylines while elevating a singular one. It's very difficult. So you kind of have to make sure you're following everybody, watching the games as well, but just communicating to everybody that this is the main storyline, and those change, right? That's the biggest thing too, is these guys have a year with us. So that guy in October is not going to be the same guy in May. And that story arc becomes incredibly different once you hit, even December with a lot of these guys. So yeah, just making sure you're consistently talking about what's in your mind in the field, what you're seeing, because it could be different than the footage, and communicating that to everybody else on the show so they can internalize that and maybe think about that when they're in the field shooting with their guy.
Yeah, can I nerd out for a second on shooting in the field? So it sounds like you're using an FX3. I feel like for most of the interviews, it looked like probably you're on the road a lot, so you're probably in a hotel room. What did some of the just actual production look like with it? It sounded like you were a shooter, but then you would have some shoot with crews. I'm curious how that all came together.
It's a healthy mix. For LeBron last year was a lot more of the FX3 and just me, because I would be able to bounce around quickly, and we didn't have a lot set up, especially during playoff times, things like that. You have to kind of, like I said, play jazz. You may shoot, you may not shoot, but just be there. And it can get expensive if you have full crews. So you have to parcel yourself out essentially as best you can. Every interview would have a full crew though. So, shooting with Alexas, we'd have 2 cameras. We'd have very specific lenses, interesting lenses last year. They're called gecko lenses. And then you had our audio guy in the room as well. And that would be the main setup. So, essentially there'd probably be about 4 crew members in the room doing an interview. But when it's the majority of the shoots tend to be this Verité fly on the wall, then it's the FX3. And all 3 directors last year had our FX3s with us at all times. So after a game, you could hop in a car, go with them, and that would be the crew. And, we have a 50 mil if we want it. We have our workhorse zoom lens. But that zoom lens is what you live on, because you're in and out of cars, homes, whatever, buses, and you have no time to say, hey, let me change this lens. And that's something we were I come from the world of just get it and run and gun sports kind of background. That's not always the case when it comes to filmmaking. And so I think that's an adjustment for the people making the show, but also the people working on the show, where you're like, oh my God, this may not look incredible, with the depth and the lighting and this and that. But I think that's also what makes these shows so real, is that you get these polished interviews, and then you can have these weird little shaky documentary, I'm following you, I'm in that room with you moments. And that that to me actually felt very real. And I liked that it was not polished and not clean. And obviously you're going to use a stabilizer. You're going to do color. You're going to make it sound great on the back end. And that's going to happen anyway. So just get what you can get. And that was pretty much the motto last year.
Okay. And then moving into post, how much are you kind of, since it was you mostly there, are you working with him on the edits? Do you kind of pass it off? How does that work?
Yeah, for season 1, I had access to, it was very cool. You have kind of like an online editing system because our staff is from around the country. And actually last year, it's people in Canada, and it was just very cool to work with people who are not just here in LA. And we all were able to have access to everything, and being able to, I would work on games and mic'd ups, and I would also work on Verité moments, especially stuff that I would shoot. And I did have opportunities to work on episodes as well. It's a lot when you're trying to juggle field and edit in this world. And that's kind of what I learned last year. And it was really cool to do it. It's just definitely a tough balance when it is a full-time job being an editor and a full-time job being a director. And so it was really interesting to be able to be involved and try to cut it and then pass it off to somebody else, which is very helpful. And I hadn't leaned on other people in a long time for edits because it was just me as a solo, producer, editor, and doing all that stuff myself. And that was really nice, being able to collaborate and say, hey, I did this. I have to go out in the field. Can you work on this today? And that was a lot of what happened. But it was really cool because you'd be able to touch everything in a sense.
Now, you mentioned like kind of being at ESPN, doing everything, and then making this jump over to the freelance side. I think a lot of people either aspire to that, they were not sure if that's the right move for them. How did you, I think one, the opportunity was incredible to do that, but I do think you probably had to do a lot of work behind the scenes to get to that moment. How did that decision come about for you?
Yeah, it was tough. I was working on a very cool opportunity at ESPN at the time, and I was actually at the ESPNW Summit talking about it. And when I kind of got that call, I had to make the decision very quickly. And it wasn't a pros and cons list, kind of. It was just more of like, is this it? And I've had opportunities presented to me in the past from this person that helped me get this opportunity and other people. And it was always never the right time, and that was okay. And I think that was the most difficult decision, was in turning down things in the past. Like, is this the moment? Have I learned all that I can learn? And I feel very comfortable now with my decisions that I made in the past that were very cool opportunities, but it didn't have a long enough runway. I didn't have enough experience as a producer in my mind. I didn't, have enough practice going out and doing different things. And at that point, I'd been a producer for a long time at ESPN. And in that moment of getting this phone call and kind of having to make this decision, that's when I had to really weigh it and say, is this it? Is this the opportunity where I'm going to look back and say, I missed out and I'm really sad about it? And that's what made me make that jump. Having the runway was a very helpful decision-making tool in that as well. That was a season-long runway, so 8 months. And in that 8 months, I felt comfortable enough to say, I'll have time to get another gig, right? And that luckily rolled into the Olympics gig, which was very unplanned at the time. But it was nice to feel like that was the right decision because of all of the decisions I had turned down in the past. I was ready for that moment.
No, I love that filter too, on like looking back on, like, how would I feel if I said no to this? I think that's a great filter for people to pass through. And I would say, like, with that, yeah, how much did the momentum of starting 5, you took this chance, took this leap, how much of that momentum up from that experience just rolled into Court of Gold?
It was very unexpected. And my dream is working in basketball. I didn't get to do enough of that at ESPN because it was just, day-to-day content is not all basketball. And by working in this world of basketball 24/7 with literally the greatest athlete in the game, I think when they were trying to put together Court of Gold, one of the DPs on that show, who's a good friend of mine, was like, hey, I'm not really supposed to know that you're on the show, but I know you're on the show. And I think that could be really cool in regards to access when it comes to the show that we're looking at for this summer. And so then my name got recommended to that director. And then we were able to talk, I think maybe January of 2024. And it was not a full thing yet. They were still trying to figure out if it was even a show at the time or if it could happen, because it's the Olympics, right? That's never been done before. And then all of a sudden it was like, it's happening. You're going and you've got this job. And I was, that's a dream in general. I'd already just had a year's worth of a dream. And then I was like, oh my God, I get to go work with LeBron again, but also Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, like all these guys that are at the same caliber of LeBron in one place in a historic team, historic Olympics. It was just, I was like, I will make it happen. I don't care what I have to do. And I was literally juggling both shows towards the end of the year because you have to get final interviews, you have to do all kinds of things. And luckily those final interviews were during training camp in Vegas. And so it was kind of nice to almost feel like you're rolling right into the next show. And being able to work with the partners at the NBA again, at Higher Ground again. It was really nice to be able to have partners that I had spent a year with. And then it just felt like I was on the same show almost for an entire year. And then Words and Pictures, obviously, was incredible.
Yes. Shout out our friends Connor Shell and Aaron Cohen. Great guys over there. No, that's just so cool to see that decision of, like you said, of saying no to other things and then rolling into those two opportunities. I think I love looking back at your story that way. And how was Paris? I mean, I worked the Brazil Olympics in 2016. It's definitely a marathon working the Olympics. How was that whole experience for you?
It was unbelievable. I mean, I don't think we had days off in general, just because you have to get everything. And luckily for Team USA, we did have help at the hotel gathering some Verité moments with the NBA access. But this show had us with the highest level of access. We were able to go into arenas. We were able to mic coaches. We're able to do a lot of these things that don't allow you to take a breath, but you don't want to take a breath because you're just like, I just want to be there for everything. If you're letting me go in the locker room with Team USA at the Olympics, I will not sleep for a month. I'll sleep after. And it's just, and we do get breaks and we can sleep, but you just want to get the best stuff you can. And the access level was unbelievable. And so from start to finish, we were filming every single day. And it was just incredible to feel a part of that and to be so welcomed by the team and Team USA basketball. It was just, you just don't know what to expect when you're going into an Olympics. I'd never worked in Olympics before, and it's a whole new world. The IOC is the IOC, and then you have obviously, broadcast and other teams and other countries and language barriers. And it took an entire village. The team at Words and Pictures is unbelievable. They navigated this thing. Jake Rogal, the director, Alexa, the executive producer, like all of these people were able to navigate this in a way that made it happen and allowed us to do our jobs as field producers to get the best stuff because they did all the hard work of allowing us to be in the right place at the right time, get the right information, and, just pave the way for us to get what we needed to get.
Yeah, I think it shows in the final product. I know the critical reviews have just been phenomenal about it. And I was curious on that. It sounds like, did you kind of slip more back into a traditional field producer role, at your time at ESPN for that show?
Yeah, it was definitely a more field producer role, which was nice in a sense because that's what I'm most comfortable in experience wise. Coming off as a director, funny enough, you on Starting Five, it felt like as a director, I was in every role again at ESPN, where I was a field producer, I was doing all the things. So it's never like I left it. And, in this role, it was very traditional field producer, but you were still, assisting, you'd help with what you could with content and questions, things like that. But because Jake was such a great director, he was on it and he would say, I have all these questions, here you go. And then he was very open about being like, hey, do you want to add anything? Is there anything you've seen? Do you want to, contribute in some way. So it was very nice to have that collaboration, but you trusted him to have all of that content for you because he's everywhere with everyone in a very short period of time, which we're not able to be as field producers for a single team. And so being able to have that access to the stuff that he prepared for you allowed you to be that traditional field producer and really dig in and get what you needed to do or get what you needed to get in the field without having to fully worry about all the other overarching storylines to weave everybody together. And I did interviews, but also our director did interviews. So it was a nice combination, which he did with every team. So he would do a lot of the interviews, with certain players, and then you would do a certain player. There's also a balance because you're scheduling interviews at the same time that you need to be in the field with somebody. So it was nice to have that support of a director that was also a field producer, where, on a day that I have to go to ping pong with Anthony Edwards and Tyrese Halliburton, he can do a Kevin Durant interview. And so it's really nice to balance that. It's almost like a no ego type shoot where, yes, you're the field producer, but you're filling in wherever you can.
But I would say with that, I'm curious, I do feel like I wouldn't call it ego per se, but there has to be some level of confidence with those teams. I mean, truth be told, it's all alphas on that team. How do you go about also obviously there is no ego, but having that confidence to be able to get what you need to get from a storytelling perspective with athletes of that caliber?
Yeah, it sounds so cliche, but just going in as yourself and being able to talk to people. Being a producer, a director, you need to be able to talk to people. And it doesn't mean you have to be this overconfident, egotistical, I'm the best person. It just means you have to be personable and be willing to listen and talk. And I think these guys, at least the people I've met over the years, just like to be treated as normal people. If you put them on a pedestal, especially guys like Kevin Durant, he doesn't want that, And so guys just want to talk to people in a normal level, in a normal setting. And that if you're yourself and, this person that's willing to just take a leap and ask them to do something and not worry about if they're going to say no, they'll appreciate that. And yes, they may say no. And that does happen. And that did happen a lot this summer because there's just so much going on. Their schedules are unbelievably packed. So if I went up to somebody and said, hey, can you go to this event and wear a mic for me? And then, or whatever. And they'd say, oh, no, I can't. And I say, okay, but what about when you get back? Can I just hang with you at the hotel? And 9 times out of 10, they'd be like, yeah, I'll be there. So then you just camp out and, for lack of a better term, just kind of stalk. And, but that's documentary filmmaking, right? You just make yourself available.
And then ready to go.
You're ready to go at the drop of a hat.
Yep.
That happened a lot. Just showing up and saying, hey, I'm here. Or, hey, I'm Susan. I'm going to be with you this summer. My friend, there's a great picture of me meeting Kevin Durant for the first time. And my DP, who was, the friend of mine who helped me get on that show, took this picture of me and just talking to Kevin. And it was just kind of a cool moment because it was just me literally going up saying, hey, Kevin Durant, nice to meet you. I'm Susan. And that was all it was. Hey, I'm going to be with you this summer. But it was just that was the moment that I started to talk to everybody. I showed up at practice. Team USA was like, hey, you got 10 minutes before we have to move into the film room. And I literally, you can see me bouncing from one guy to another, being like, hey, what's your cell phone? Can you have my cell phone? Can I have your agent's cell phone? Can I have somebody's number to talk to? And, that's not embarrassing. Some people may think that's weird to just go up and throw yourself out and be like, hey, I need to talk to you at some point, but this is my, whatever. It's what you have to do especially in a short period of time to gain maybe trust or just showing your face to say, hey, I'll be at the games hidden in the corner of the locker room. This is me. I work for Netflix, not anything else. Remember this face. And if you see me in the hotel and I come up and ask you for something, it's for this show. And, not everybody had said yes at that point. So it was just kind of a scramble to say, I'm here, would love to get you on camera. It's for us. It's for you to have. And so I think that's a lot of what helps get that buy-in, plus the setup, obviously, of Jake this summer, being able to talk to them at training camp and prior, I'm sure, for many days. But just allowing the person who would be in most of those situations to see your face. And yeah, just putting yourself out there. It's hard for some people. It can be hard for me sometimes too. I love talking to people. I like meeting new people. it can be hard in moments because it's like big pressure because sometimes they may say no, but it's just accepting that and saying, oh yeah, they didn't say that, but maybe I'll get them in another moment.
Right. Yeah. No. And honestly, I think it's hard in this male dominated industry from sports and entertainment from a female. I've worked with some incredible women in the sports space, but you are, in my opinion, a trailblazer in this space. How does it feel to kind of just look back and say like, holy cow, I've just done some incredible things in my career, but especially like making a new path for women to work in this space going forward?
That's so nice of you to say that. It's funny because I don't think of it because maybe just because I'm in the moment and always running around like a crazy person. But yeah, it's really cool to kind of look back and see the opportunities that I've been given. And I think it's more of a strength being a woman in sports nowadays than it
I agree.
Yep. Than it has been in the past. I think, in the past it was a lot of, hey, I'm supposed to be here. So most of your energy just gets put into I'm here. I promise I can do this. Now it's just more being able to say like, I am the woman in the room. I am the person that can maybe get something different from this guy because he's talking to a woman. And not to say traditionally that men don't open up to other men, like that's no longer really a thing, but it can be looked at that with a lot of people. And I think being able to be that, not just that woman in the room, but the knowledgeable woman in the room, everything. Like I will sit there and talk basketball with these guys till the end of time. Like that is my favorite thing, to be just analyzing what happened and why didn't you do this? What was that? And I don't know if it surprises some people when you hear from a woman still. I'm not surprised if it does, but outside of the sports world, I think it does to hear that and taking advantage of the fact that you can provide something different. I do think there should be more women directors, more women showrunners in this space particularly, because there is an advantage, I think, to female storytelling. And that, it shouldn't be a surprise when you hear things like, the Penguin show was done by a female showrunner. And you're like, why was this show so good? Because it was different. It was the first time it was maybe told in a different way. And that's kind of what you can unlock with allowing these women to have these opportunities to be in charge of storytelling. And yeah, it's interesting because I didn't have a lot of that support when I was back, early days at ESPN. And that was not a knock. It was just, that was a sign of the times. There were not a lot of women helping, or there too in positions to help other women. So you had to kind of blaze your own trail, for lack of a better term, because there was no trail there. And there were a lot of changes over the years, which helped that. I think just sign of the times, people were putting themselves out there and getting these jobs, and companies were realizing, I think, and again, not ESPN, other people in this world are realizing the potential that is kind of here with these women who are in a lot of these behind the scenes roles that, a lot of women on camera get that opportunity, but not behind the scenes. And that started with day one. I was the only female in production when I was in college. I was, very few people, and there's no women EVS operators when I was in that position. And, having the behind the scenes desire to be there to tell the stories and not be the person on camera is kind of a flip from what people are used to. So yeah, it was nice. And that's also why I try to work with as many women as possible and try to get women in production roles if I can, because I didn't have that assistance when I was starting out. And the men that I worked with over the years were incredible. And that's why I'm able to get the positions that I'm at now. I learned so much, especially when I became a feature producer, from my male bosses at ESPN, because they gave me that opportunity. And I hate that that's a rarity in this world, that's kind of a thing in other places. And I was lucky where I was that they nurtured that, they educated me. I was able to absorb as much as I could. And I would love for other women to get that opportunity, especially in this freelance space, because it's so much of networking and friendships, and sometimes your work doesn't show for itself. And being able to talk to as many women as I can, that's what I like to do today.
Yeah. And I would say, like, with that, what advice, females listening to this is like, oh man, I want to be Susan when I get along in my career. Like, what advice do you have for that listener out there?
Just being confident in who you are and what your skill set is. Don't try to put yourself in a box, because I've been told so many times over the years that I am not qualified for something. This is not your wheelhouse. You don't have the experience. But then you're like, just give me a shot. And so many times I've been able to talk to people. In my opinion, there were a lot of people probably up for this job at Starting Five. And being able to look at my resume compared to maybe other filmmakers at the time, that probably was not as desirable on paper as somebody else. But then when you can talk to somebody and see who you are, what you can bring to the table, being a solution-oriented person as much as possible, because this world is, as we talked about, will never go right in the field. So being able to be that person that is comfortable with change, instability, and just being able to be yourself and confident in what you have in a skill set, and then being able to learn on top of that skill set, that is the best advice I can have. Which again, all kind of boils down to listening to other people. What are your needs? Because every show is going to have a different need. Every job is going to have a different need. Jumping from a director position where I'm shooting, writing the questions, out in the field, doing all this stuff on my own, to a field producer role, that's a different need. And if you want to be a freelancer, again, I've only been doing this for about 1.5 years now, but I feel like I've learned so much in that 1.5 years. And just being able to understand what the needs are and what you can bring to the table, that's going to really help you get the jobs you want and talk to the people in a way that you'll understand what they need and put that into the job and do it as best as you can. And that's when you can really use your work showing for itself. Once you get into that position, you can be like, this is why I'm here. I can give you everything that you need and more. And that's going to change every job you have. But yeah, it just boils down to being able to be flexible, but being confident in yourself, especially as a woman, being confident in yourself.
Right. No, I think that applies to women. I think that really applies to all everyone in this business out there, because I love that it really had nothing to do with like the technical aspect that comes into this job. Yes, I think that is like a part of it for sure. Like, but a lot of it comes down to like communication, how you present yourself, and the confidence you have to present yourself on like what you can deliver on. So I think that's just fantastic about us.
Anything numbers wise, right? I can teach you how to edit. I can teach you how to use a camera. I learned how to use this camera. This wasn't the camera that I used before. And you as a DP know that as well. Like you get a new camera, you learn it, you have to do all this stuff, but you can teach that. It's hard to teach the ability to talk to people, to listen and be an active listener and being engaged in situations, and then being comfortable to put yourself out there as well at the same time. It's a lot of, not just personality, but a confidence level mixed with, that lack of ego, that ability to just mold into every situation. That's stuff that's really difficult to teach, especially when you've been in it for a while. And that's experience-based. I may not have been as confident in my first, shoot in Auburn, where I'm chasing around somebody on a football field in the middle of 110 degrees heat. But that's day one, right? And that's 15, 16 years ago to now. I've learned everything that can go wrong, everything that goes right, how to adapt. And that's really stuff that you'll learn over time with yourself, but you can't really teach that to somebody. And so, the technical stuff, that'll come, and don't worry about that. Just being able to communicate that you can learn that stuff, that you're willing to dedicate your time. That's going to be really important for people to hear.
Oh, man. Well, I think that's a great way to end this podcast. I can't thank you enough for sharing all your stories about working with LeBron and Paris this summer. Where can people check you out if they want to see more of your work?
Starting 5 season 1 is on Netflix, and Court of Gold is also on Netflix. And hopefully we have some more basketball to show you guys.
I will have to bring you back for another episode. All right. Well, thank you, Susan. Thanks you guys for listening, watching Frame by Frame. Check out Susan's work, and we'll see you next time on the next episode. If you want to learn more, make sure that you subscribe to my channel. And if you could rate us on the platform you're listening to, that would be a huge help to get the word out. I would really appreciate 5 stars if this conversation was helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Frame by Frame.